start to hear a great story from Wema. And Wema, I want you to feel free to share where God has taken you uh, from where you were to where you are today in your saving journey. So Wema's muted right now. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Can you share your video too?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I was having a bit of trouble.
It's all right.
Yeah. So again, thank you for this opportunity. Don't know if you can hear me well, but I'm gonna go ahead and share my story. Yeah, I hope it will bring life to whoever is or might be going through the same. So a little backstory. How we usually start our stories is uh, about how many years ago was this? Let me say about 5 years ago. I was 22 at the time, and I didn't know that my parents were living off the savings that they had because uh, really can't say it's poor business decision making, but it mostly how life happens. So life happened to our family, and my parents chose to keep that away from us because we were children, and they really didn't want to scare us. So for over a year, over a year and a half, actually, we were living off our savings. So that was up until I was 22, and some months is when my parents decided to come clean because things never worked out how they had planned. And well, the business deal that they were waiting for didn't really actually go through. So they had to sit us down and talk to us as children and just let us know like it's okay, things are gonna happen like in future. So long story short, yeah, we were evicted from our house. Um, it wasn't easy. I was staying with my auntie. My parents were being housed by their friends and whatnot. And my auntie was gracious enough to uh, let me stay without paying rent, although I was working at the time. So I remember one evening, my parents and my brother and me, once in a while, we usually met in a restaurant in town because remember, like we were all in different houses, right? So I remember like my mom telling us that, you know, what has happened to us might or might not happen to you guys, but I want you, like, she was just urging us to be wise as her children and told us that the reason why they were able to sustain their lives for that long is because they had savings. And this is like, I didn't even expect this to happen like to us. Like, that's like the last thing I ever thought would happen because, first of all, I grew up in a Christian household. I known that God never forsakes his people, you know, all those things that you're told in church, like, hey, um, nothing will be devoured as long as you put your trust in God. But then we remembered like the story of Job. Job did nothing wrong, but still life happened to him. So uh, at that time, like I was like really shocked, and at the time I wasn't really taking my um, saving seriously because I mean I had my parents were kind of well off, so whenever I needed anything, I would just use my money and ask them for some more. So where it like in the second month, because we were away from each other for like 2 3 months. So before we got money and moved back in a similar in one house again, during those months, my mom also pulled me aside and told me that you should stop this bad habit and you should take your life seriously because savings is very important. And remember, if they did not save, like I think we would have been like really, really out in the streets and living. So excuse me, she told me one thing I would never forget. I was 22 at the time, remember? So she told me like, start saving now be aggressive in your savings. Like, actually, she gave me the example of what Mr. and Mrs. Flippen have just said about the ant, because the ant looks frail. The ant looks like it's such a small animal, it can barely do anything. But it has a vision, like during the winter, which it will eventually come, you might need something that you have stored up. So she told me, you can either be 32 in 10 years, you can either be 32 with savings, a woman with savings, or you can be 32 and a woman without savings. Which road are you gonna walk down in? So after that, I started like seriously saving. I was actually very adamant, and by God's grace, I was able to save like a good amount of money. Then within, I think, 7 or 8 months, I moved to Rwanda, and that's when I met Miss the Flippins. I had not really done much with my savings, actually, to be honest. I was just saving. I had this big vision that, land in Kenya, you can't start paying off in small chunks. So I wanted to like make a big splurge with with the money that you have. But even with my mom and my parents, they were just like telling me, hey, you should invest in your savings. But I was always brushing off the idea, telling them, this is my money. Don't tell me what to do with my money and stuff. But after the financial stewardship, the Philippines told us, like, what is your goal, like your savings, and then to what extent. So that's when it hit me, like, okay, I am saving, but do I have actually a goal? And it reminded me of what my parents used to keep on telling me, like, you have to save, but you also have to invest. So that's when I decided that I am going to invest in the money that I have saved. Like, it should have a purpose, because remember, things like land, actually, I think you guys told me that, right? If you remember well, that things like land always appreciate in value. So even though you save for the next of your life, you will never have the actual amount to go and splurge, like buy it all at once. So yeah, that's like my story. I hope it will encourage most of you. I think I've like cut most of it so because of time, but in case you want more of it, the juicy parts, just text me and we shall discuss one-on-one.
Well, hey, I want some of the juicy parts right now. So, 'cause I heard your story before, and can I ask you a few questions about what you said?
Sure.
This is different from Sylvester's story last week, but it's similar to Emmanuel's. Sylvester said he had a master's degree and no one had talked to him about money. But you almost got a real big education from that conversation with your mom. Just how critical was that in your life?
Well, it was critical. Like, it was really eye-opening for me because I experienced it firsthand. Like, no one needed to come and tell me, oh, there was this someone who their parents like really went wrong in business and blah blah blah. So I experienced it firsthand, and I know how it can affect someone greatly. It really did affect me to the extent I had depression. So I don't think I needed more convincing in that about savings. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And then your mom gave you a 10-year vision to think about.
Yeah.
I love that part. Yeah. Yes. So you could imagine one of two courses.
Yeah. Kind of like, yeah. So even with that, even the Bible actually tells us that we're given two choices: pick life or death. So whichever path you choose, you're gonna end up on the same. Like, there's no corner to turn. Whichever path you choose is gonna take you to the destination. So in the same way, you can either choose to like have savings 6 months down the line, or even 1 month down the line. Let's start simple.
Yeah.
Are you going to commit to that, or are you 1 month from now, will you still say that, oh, I don't have savings? It's up to you. You have to make the decision.
Yeah, and I know a little bit more about the details of your story. When you went to Rwanda, you actually started as an intern, and
Mhm.
we all know interns make very, very small salary. And weren't you even criticized for taking a job with such a small salary?
Yeah, yeah. You're taking me back. I just want to laugh about it. My dad actually did tell me that you didn't tell us you're going to Rwanda to become a watchman because of the small salary. I was getting like he said that have we failed you as parents? Like come back, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But you were in that position when we had our workshop.
Hmm.
And I don't think you never stopped giving so that you could save, did you?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. But you've said one thing that Mary Beth and I have complimented you and quoted you often
Hmm.
about the budget that you made. Uh,
Oh yeah. So I always like had this budget, and I think my story is actually very similar to Emmanuel's. Like when I was listening to it last week, in that he said he had like a specific cap. That's like the same with me. Maybe if I'm earning X amount of money, I said that I'm not gonna spend more than this because you know that's just me, because I have a goal to maybe save this amount of money, to give this amount of money. And the thing with a budget, it's a promise you have to make to yourself because you know what your like what your vision is. No one else knows your vision apart from yourself. So if you spend all the money you have, just even though it's through helping, who is gonna help you when the time comes when you need help? You know, you have to have like something stored up for yourself, just like you've mentioned with the ants
yeah.
story. Yeah. So I think for me, a budget is like a promise you have to make for yourself in order to achieve the goals that you want to achieve.
Mm. Well,
Yeah,
that,
look, did everybody get that? She said it twice, but yeah, budget is a promise that you make to yourself.
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So you had this goal to save to buy some land.
Mhm.
Um, you kind of kept your savings secret, right? I mean, it was not anything you talked to anybody about.
Not really. I usually told people I save. I
Okay.
just don't tell people what I'm saving for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and when you bought the land, did you take everything you saved to pay for the land, or did you keep some emergency fund available?
Yeah, so my budget has like split up. So there's the savings towards the land, and I cannot touch the emergency money. So when I was buying the land, it was like from the budget of the savings land.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've got budget categories for different types of savings. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
I want to add like all this is by the grace of God because honestly you can't do it on your own. So even for me making that decision, I had to like involve God in it because the minute like I know it's not easy. It wasn't easy for me either. But when you set your heart right and like maybe not like maybe you actually involve God in this, you will, I promise you like things are gonna change in your life like they did
mm,
for
mm. Now, could you explain this little Swahili saying, Haba Nahaba Hujaza Kababa?
me. I don't know if I can. Hey Joseph, you wanna help me with that? Agali?
I think it's just little by little, you find that the sack is full or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Little by little makes big.
Mm-hmm.
So your mom was very smart to say, "What do you want to be in 10 years?"
Yeah. Mhm.
Because you can do something small, small, and 1 year looks like, I'm not getting anywhere. But 2 to 3 years, you really are in a different place. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
love your story, Wayma. Yeah. So,
Can I, one thing that stood out to me this time when you told your story, your mom had told you this. but you hadn't, I mean, you maybe had acted on it a little bit, but you really didn't have like that goal. And then you heard the financial stewardship workshop from us, and that moved you along in your journey just a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to, I know for me, it takes sometimes 2 or 3 times hearing something over and over before I get it. So I just want to encourage everybody to continue sharing your stories with other people, because you don't know when it's going to be that next person that moves you a little further. Because I mean, I didn't know anything that your mom had said, you know, with the workshop at all. I mean, I wasn't trying to move you along or anything, because I had no idea. You know, we just
yeah. And just to add on that, like sometimes people can be stubborn, and the more they hear your story, the more they get impacted. I know maybe I was being stubborn for like for a long little while. Don't know if I make sense, but yeah.
Me too. I get it. That's really good.
Yes. So if someone calls you Ant Woman, is that a compliment?
Yeah, it is a compliment. And it is Ant Queen.
Okay, good.
Make it better.
All right.
Do we have any questions?